Hey guys, Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy, also president of the MaxfieldReport.com. This is your market recap for week ending October 5th, 2018. Last week started out as most people, expected. Packers offer lists were relatively unchanged with the week prior, both in the number of selections offered as well as asking prices. The one change that was noticed is that it appears to be a lot more jumbo and super jumbo branded steers and heavy Texas steers offered. That is twofold. We've started to get a little cooler in the United States, so cattle are starting to put on the long hair. They're starting to build up their fat cover. That's making cattle heavier. Also, you're starting to see, as far as yield grades, you're starting to see a lot more yield grade 4s and 5s. Into the harvest mix. That means those are cattle that are overfed, and those are cattle that are have obviously then larger, thicker, more plump hides, and they weigh more. So it appears that many of the packers are pushing to try to get some sales of these heavier cattle off and get them on the books and for relatively quick shipment. I've also heard that that's resulted in some of the shipments for the branded steers and Texas steers to slow down a little bit on the regular weights. So something worth keeping an eye on there. As far as interest last week, Korea was out on Tuesday observing their holiday. You had Chinese tanners out the entire week observing their Golden Week holiday. So it was a very relatively uneventful week. Many of people, including myself, thought we might see some of the Taiwanese tanners and some of the Korean tanners come in last week and show a little interest in absence of the Chinese, but unfortunately that really failed to come to fruition. The few people willing to show their price ideas were coming anywhere from $2, $3, even as much as $4 and $5 under the asking price of Packers. Packers dug their heels in, didn't want to trade at substantially lower levels, especially when they're trying to look for steady. End of the day, I think there was there were hides exchanging hands last week. Levels were, if they were lucky, depending on the selection, they got steady. Most of them traded about at roughly 50 cents to $1 lower. But with the kill of 643 last week, the popular opinion is Packers likely did not clear their harvest last week. As far as cow hides, really no change there, folks. Lower grades are difficult to sell. There's no secret about that. There's plenty of cows for sale in the United States. There's cows for sale in Europe. There's oodles of wet blue for sale in Brazil. These guys aren't enjoying their experience trying to sell these, especially trying to get any kind of orders in volume. The people are coming in, recognize it. That would be buyers. They recognize the pressure in the market, so they're bidding lower. Of course, producers are reluctant to trade it substantially lower, considering, you look at branded cows somewhere in the single digits. You got, that's in the south. In the north, they're barely over double digits. So, again, having everybody out on holiday last week did not help that situation. And the consensus of the trade is that the guys selling cow hides did not have a strong week of trading either. Looking around the globe, you have Europe that still appears that they have more than enough hides for sale. Producers are reluctant to take lower money, although they probably in private recognize they need to trade it lower in order to move some volumes. Decent interest coming from the Italians. It's nothing to write home about, but that seems to be really the only reasonable place you can sell hides at levels close to where you're asking. Down in Brazil, plenty of material for sale. I'm hearing that TR1s trended even slightly lower last week. Lots of TR2s, TR3s for sale. As far as our export report last week, a bit of a mixed bag. Wet salted sales came in where a lot of us were thinking around 270,000. That's not a huge number. The wet blue sales were obviously the biggest news of the day. 385,000 hides sold. You had 115,000. Actually, no, let me retract that. You had about 155,000 sold to Italy, which is not surprising, being that we had the Milan Fair week before last, and there were people saying that they had some decent sales. The big number that surprised everybody is the 187,000 sold to the Dominican Republic. A lot of different opinions as to whether that was a real number or not. Some people are saying there should be a correction on next week's report. Some people are saying that, maybe a couple of these producers cleaned up their closets and were able to get some sold. What makes it interesting, keep this in mind, here about 6-8 weeks ago, the outstanding sales on wet blue was 1.2 million. It had dropped to 750,000. So if you subscribe to producers being well sold on wet blue, that number may be a little closer to reality than what most people give me credit for. So Harvest last week, 643. The week prior was 650. Packers still making lots of money. They're going to continue to kill these cattle, folks. As I've said to you in earlier commentary, you know, when Packers can make money, they will run the wheels off the bus. There's more than enough cattle out there, and keep looking for these numbers to be well north of 635, probably all the way through into November. Remember, we got a Thanksgiving holiday, which would be the fourth week in November, or excuse me, the fourth Thursday of the month actually is what it would amount to. But that's probably going to be the only chance we're going to see numbers dwindle to anything below 600. So going forward, it looks like we're still going to have lots of animals, or excuse me, lots of hides to sell. I would encourage those selling hides to sell into this market, as the upside potential of this market looks minimal, while the downside looks like it's got more than its fair share going lower. That's it for now. Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. Check out my website, www.themaxfieldreport.com. 14-day free trials, no obligation. Check it out. Look forward to you taking a trial with me. Thank you.